Huh. It's October. Well, this calls for some redecoration. That's it.
I actually really love this time of year. No more sweating in your car in the summer heat, stalked by rabid dogs, or needing to cool off swimming in the river with killer sharks. Nope, it's October, which means we're ready for the best holiday ever. Christmas.
At least according to retail stores, they really can't wait, can they?
Christmas wants to take up space in October so much, well, fine. We'll just celebrate Christmas with spooky skeletons and pumpkins and ghosts and all things amazing. As it turns out, there's a movie made just for that, with the Nightmare Before Christmas.
Boys and girls of every age, wouldn't you like to see something strange?
So Tim Burton was working as an animator for Disney back in the early 80s, first with Fox and the Hound, though his artwork doesn't have that Disney look, so he was stuck with working on backgrounds. When Black Cauldron came into production, Tim was hired to work, but again, his artwork was not what the Disney company really wanted. They wanted brighter colors and soft lines in their artwork. What Tim wanted to do was much darker, with duller colors and sharp angles. He met Rick Hendricks and the two collaborated first with a live-action Hansel and Gretel TV special. It was, interesting. Tim and Rick then worked on two other projects, a stop-motion short film called Vincent and Frankenweenie. No, the other one. This Frankenweenie got Tim fired from Disney, claiming he was wasting money making videos that were too off-putting, too scary for kids. And while making Vincent, Tim was writing sketches and small snippets of a poem that would later become The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Now, copyright laws are weird, but bear with me.
Because Tim made the poem and sketches working at Disney, and he was pushing the idea to make it a 30-minute short within Disney, the company owned the rights. So when Tim was fired in 1984, he couldn't shop around the idea at other studios. A couple years go by, and oh, looky here, someone just made a bunch of movies that made all the money in the world. Now it's 1991, and Tim Burton is back in Disney working on what the company is hoping for is another Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast. Another animated movie that will push the company forward into what was called the Disney Renaissance. This was evident in their first trailer for Nightmare, focusing on the animation much more than anything else.
From the beginning, Walt Disney established a tradition of innovation. From the world's first full-length animated feature, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, to the new photographic techniques introduced in 101 Dalmatians, the combination of animation and live action in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and the dazzling use of computer technology in Beauty and the Beast. Now, Walt Disney Pictures is joining forces with Tim Burton, the creative genius behind Batman, Beetlejuice, and Edward Scissorhands, to bring you one of the most extraordinary and exciting motion pictures of our time, The Nightmare Before Christmas, coming to theaters everywhere for the 1993 holiday season from Walt Disney Pictures.
The problem? The Little Mermaid and Beast were fairy tales with what was then a fresh but still classic interpretation. And Burton was fired from Disney because his ideas didn't fit that style. But the deal was made, and Burton teamed up with people he worked with in the past to make Nightmare, and later on his poem was published as a storybook.
I've covered outside the normal adaptation treatment on this channel in the past, but here we have a storybook that is both a template for the movie, but also its own published work.
I don't have an original copy of the book from 1993. The new editions advertise new drawings and lines. I don't know what new drawings or lines were added, but this is the edition people will get if they feel like picking up a copy from the store, and you will be surprised if you expected an exact retelling of the movie. The movie went through a 3-year-long process, moving from a planned 30-minute short to full length. In that process, a lot needed to be added. The book focuses on just Jack Skellington, the Pumpkin King from Halloween Town, and like the movie, we see him feeling bored and tired with scaring people, and he wants something more in life. He comes across in the book 3 doors instead of the movie 7, and finds Christmas Town, where he straight up just steals everything.
And so that his friends wouldn't think him a liar, he took the present-filled stockings that hung by the fire. He took candy and toys that were stacked on the shelves and a picture of Santa with all of his elves. He took lights and ornaments and the star from the tree, and from the Christmas town sign
He took the big letter C. Jack is an asshole!
I mean, he's not malicious, he's not mean, and his enthusiasm is very contagious, but when he's caught up in the moment, there is no getting to him. He has absolutely no second thought, no problem with kidnapping a man, assuming his identity, and leave him at the mercy of people he knows can't be trusted, if it means getting what he wants. This characterization stays with him in the movie almost all the way through. On the positive side, he does learn his lesson when he finds out his version of Christmas is not really enjoyed by everyone, except maybe people like me and Blink-182.
Darkness in the valley, we can live like Jack and Sally if we want, where you can always find me, and we'll have Halloween on Christmas.
Santa Claus in both book and movie don't have much to do in either version. In the book, Jack offers Santa the job of the Pumpkin King for next Halloween, without asking if he ever even wanted the job, which leaves him to appear in the end of the story when Jack is at his worst. He comes to him as a caring and understanding Father Christmas to offer his wisdom, but Tim's artwork seems a little off. My dear Jack, I applaud your intent. I know wreaking such havoc was not what you meant. This is the face of applauding. The storybook has no villain, leaving the movie to make Oogie Boogie, to both keep Santa hostage as opposed to keeping him hostage in Halloween Town, and also to add to the movie's runtime, making a villain to stop in the end.
Maybe I'm just getting older. Or maybe I'm beginning to sympathize with Santa after everything he's been through.
I'd listen to her. She's the only one who makes any sense around this insane asylum. Skeletons.
Technically, most of the residences of Halloween Town are in the book, but they're background characters. Literally, just in the background. And sadly, that also includes Sally. Despite this being Jack's story, a lot of people gravitated towards Sally in this movie. Her character and backstory is very sympathetic. She's the softer resident of Halloween Town and the most level-headed. She understands Jack's depression, his hope to find something more, similar to how she wants something more, being held captive by her creator, constantly poisoning him with hope to escape.
You know, when you put it that way, one definitely tugs at the heartstrings more than the other.
Nightmare was originally planned to be a 30-minute short, and I think if it ended up that way, it wouldn't have the same ring with audiences the way it did. Good ideas were made and added, bringing out Sally and the other residences, making them more fleshed out, even if that flesh is melting. Creating a villain so Jack and what he does looks better by comparison. And most importantly, having Danny Elfman on board, making it a musical.
With your permission, I'm going to do my stuff.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to do the best I can.
Before this movie had a script, Tim would talk with Danny about these scenes and ideas about what is happening in the story. Like, Danny needed to make a scene that was everything Halloween. Pumpkins and monsters and ghosts. People needed to hear a song and have no doubt in their minds that this is Halloween.
This is Halloween, this is Halloween, 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 Halloween.
Yeah, like that, or when we needed a song to show the Halloween people making Christmas instead of Santa's elves this time.
This time, it's making Christmas, la la la.
Yeah, like that. Danny had this idea that Nightmare wouldn't so much be a musical as it would an opera, and it really shows. The difference being an opera carries a story with little to no dialogue, where a musical is a story with a song coming in to break the story. There's 11 songs in this movie, and that's a lot. And all of them not just fit the story, they pretty much are the story. The script was written and finished to work around the songs. The Disney company wanted to distance itself from this movie, which is hard to believe with its logo everywhere now. Originally releasing Nightmare in only 2 theaters, then to 500, and finally nationwide.
It gained a strong cult following, but still, when it was released on video, it had the Touchstone logo, not Disney.
There's plenty of reasons why this movie had a following that only grew more and more over the years. Yeah, this was the first full-length stop-motion movie, and the music is fantastic and gets in your head, and the romance is cute between Jack and Sally. The story is enjoyable, but plenty of other Disney movies do this. Nightmare is different. Not just the animation, but the art. I've kept talking about Burton, but Henry Selak was the director, and with Burton's art and Selak's directing, you have this combination of both Christmas whimsy and Gothic reflection. This was back in 1993, and Goth was a small subculture that was on the edge of mainstream culture, poking it in the side. Nightmare came at a perfect time, and we're going to talk about that perfect time in the next episode. This is CB Smith, and thanks for taking a page. Last video I talked about The Nightmare Before Christmas, this little movie in the 90s that Disney originally neglected, treating it as its redheaded stepchild, until it grew and grew over the years to the point that it is now a holiday tradition for some families, with plenty of merchandise to accompany it. There's a cranberry festival held every year at this little village near my house, and someone made this for sale. That is how popular this movie has become. And why not? It's a good movie. The animation is nice, the songs are memorable, the story is fun and simplistic enough for small children to understand, while still having a few adult jokes thrown in for the parents. A two-faced politician that's literally two-faced. Then there's the art style. There were other movies made in the 90s that poked around with it, that incorporated it, but Nightmare, full on without any shred of guilt, embraced the Gothic art style, and in such a way that made it unique. If I wanted to talk about the origin and history of Goth, and I really want to, this video would be massive, covering the fall of the Roman Empire, the rise of the Germanic tribes, the Dark Ages and cathedral architecture, the Age of Enlightenment, the Romantic era, the Victorian era, the end of the First World War, the rise of German Expressionism, the Great Depression, the Second World War, the Beat Generation, all the social changes of the 1960s and the music that accompanied it, the 1970s recession, punk rock and post-punk. This video is going to cover Goth in the 80s and 90s in the mainstream, so let's take out our sociology books. I don't have a sociology book. In the 70s and 80s, you had an economic recession that in some people gave them the inspiration screamed behind very fast drums and guitars. Punk rock. As a group, punk acted as a counterculture. It was a reaction to frustration in a political system. These are the kids whose first memory involving politics growing up was watching the President of the United States quit being the president, and then he literally just flew away. With counterculture, the identity is mainly based on what that group is not. Anti-establishment, anti-authority, anti-elitism. A group of young people feeling like they are being pushed around. Sometimes the symbols and ideas of those countercultures could spring up into the mainstream, turning it into a brand, something with no other purpose than to make money, no longer standing for something, turning the symbols of rebellion into a fashion trend. By contrast, a subculture will create an identity based outside of what it is not trying to be. As for what is or isn't goth, the definition will go back and forth depending on who is being asked. But one word definitely keeps popping up. Darkness! While dark is the first word that comes to mind for goth, it's a pretty broad term when you get down to it. What is dark outside of being the opposite of light? For goth, dark is used kind of like a funhouse mirror, reflecting off of something, distorting the original image. While one person might see the reflection and be disgusted by it, another might find the reflections comforting and try to replicate it. This doesn't mean that goths are living in a fantasy reflecting reality. It's more of a hyper self-awareness that it is a reflection, and it's a choice in expressing that reflection.
But just so we're reminded of the ones who are held back. Up front, there ought to be a man in black.
In the mid-80s, the goth scene has established itself in major cities around Europe and the United States, but was generally foreign everywhere else, until 1988.
It's showtime.
What the hell is Beetlejuice? It acts like it's for kids, but it has a lot of slower moments that kids would normally lose interest in. It's scary, but it has funny moments. It's a comedy, but also has elements of horror. Who the hell thought all this would mesh together? Oh, that's right. Burton grew up as a fan of 50s and 60s horror movies. Whether or not he's considered goth is really up to him. In one interview, he talks about how gothic images make him feel more at home. In Beetlejuice, he introduced the mainstream to goth through the main character, Lydia.
We'll build you a dark room in the basement, okay?
My whole life is a dark room.
Lydia was a character that was Gothic, who fit some of the stereotypes that was associated with Goth at the time. Her clothes were black and very similar to the Victorian dress style, and she was depressed, but she wasn't always. She wasn't violent and, to the best of my knowledge, not worshipping the devil. And after she discovers her place is haunted and becomes friends with the ghosts, she smiles more, she laughs more. At the end, she's wearing a school uniform, but it's, and there's that word, darker, but she's also dancing to Calypso music. Lydia is a fully fleshed out character that makes Goth look fun and inviting. And she was a main character in a movie that was given a wide release. She was, for some people, the first, if not the only introduction to Goth culture. My introduction was Angela from Night of the Demons.
Here you are. I was just warming my hands in the fire.
Night of the Demons came out the same year as Beetlejuice. It was released to a small amount of theaters, but gained a small cult following over the years. It was a full-on horror movie that just so happened to have another Gothic character. Like Lydia, Angela is smiling, having fun with her friends. She makes Goth look fun. Except this is a horror movie. There's an unspoken rule in horror that the victims die because they weren't following the rules. They had sex, they were doing drugs, they were summoning demons through mirrors in a haunted mansion that they broke into. They had to be punished. While Lydia has her happy ending, Angela gets possessed and made to do sexy dances to goth rock, which I can't say I'm complaining too much about. What can I say? I like my women like I like my coffee. Dark and brooding.
Boo! Boo!
That was the worst pun ever.
The point being, Lydia was the positive representation of Goth that people were exposed to. There was a demand for Goth fashion and Gothic merchandise afterwards, and the very next year, Hot Topic opened its doors.
Hot Topic is not punk rock! Hot Topic is not punk rock! Hot Topic is not punk rock! Hot Topic is not punk rock!
Irv Madden opened the first Hot Topic in 1989 after stepping down as CEO of the Children's Place. He saw that there was an untapped market for subculture clothing, and this was their first store logo. It looks like the 80s threw up another 80s. After looking at their sales and noticing their goth and punk clothing line were the top sellers, this became their new storefront. Now, there are people in the goth community that feel that the idea of placing a store that catered to a subculture that wouldn't really go to a mall takes away some kind of authenticity from the community. The term mall goths was popular in the 90s and early 2000s, and the idea that Hot Topic wasn't a real goth store is true. They were trying to sell to a whole bunch of different groups of kids, and their first ever commercial is a testament to that.
Topic. Hot Topic.
Cool.
To give the people behind Hot Topic credit where it is due, they looked into the products sold in the more real goth stores that are only found in the big cities and moved their stores into the shopping malls far away from those cities. This was the 90s and the internet was still a foreign concept, let alone internet stores. Online was a term to describe where you were in the grocery store, not a digital format you carried around in your pocket. Hot Topic for many was their first and sometimes only availability to band t-shirts, to alternative clothing, and to music CDs that the local Walmart wouldn't sell. Kids in more suburban and rural areas are being shown a form of art in movies that they can't find. Enter Hot Topic. And what movie came out during this time of goth entering the mainstream?
Boys and girls of every age, wouldn't you like to see something strange?
Yes, I would. While Beetlejuice introduced people to Gothic attitudes and Gothic people, Nightmare gave a whole movie that without any apology expresses Gothic imagery. That funhouse mirror analogy, Nightmare is that to a T, and people love the heck out of that movie. Even though its whole existence owes its gratitude to a director willing to go back to a company that fired him originally for the very art form that they want him to make, now that it's learned that it's what the people want. And that's okay. There's a reluctance with some people in the goth community to enjoy the fact that the culture had a mainstream appeal. Granted, that availability brought people in that may have treated the culture as a phase. but it also shown kids who didn't have that availability to embrace it. Hot Topic moved on to other subcultures because the goth appeal moved on as well. But some of those kids stayed, grew up. Some of them are your teachers and counselors, some are your waiters and cooks, some are your favorite bands, some even joined the military. Yeah, the military. This is CB Smith. This is my channel where I do a show called Taking a Page. They signed up and being shipped out soon. I enlisted into the New Jersey National Guard, and I will be leaving for basic training in November. There's a lot of mixed feelings, but they're doing it anyway. I hope the next 2 months I leave you guys with some of my best episodes yet. Yeah. It'd be really lame to say, but this is CB Smith, and thanks for taking my pages. Thanks for taking a page, guys. I'll be back in April, I think. Hello there, the angel from my nightmares, the shadow in the background of the morgue, the unsuspecting victim of darkness in the valley. We can live like Jack and Sally. Hi everyone, CB Smith here, and that was a bit of a sappy ending, wasn't it, huh? This video came out about 5 years ago, and obviously I came back in one piece. I didn't want the video to end so abruptly, and despite my singing, I do like the little acoustic rendition I played at the end, so I kept the ending as it was. Rewatching this video, I think I may have overemphasized Tim Burton's contribution to the rise of goth culture in the 90s and early 2000s. I don't think he created it or even kickstarted it, but I do think that being a mainstream director with the backing of 2 major studios, he had the reach that many gothic artists didn't have at the time. The fact that for the most part these movies were made or targeted with kids in mind helped as well. One of the sources I used in the original video had a quote referring to Nightmare Before Christmas as like Baby Goth's first introduction, and I think that's fair to say. Going back to these older videos, I realized that I never actually listed any sources that I read for my information, and the videos being separated into parts like I used to do seems to be like an inconvenience that I utilized when I was using a 15-year-old laptop. That's lately been changed. I started combining the parts together, but that does mean that longer videos mean longer wait time. But here's to another 5 years of making videos. Until then, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I hope to see you guys next time.